So the movie is Renfield, Thomas. We've been looking forward to this for quite a while. Nic Cage as Count Dracula, and you got Nic Cage behind me for those who are watching this on a visual form. Nic Cage behind me, and then I've got a Dracula thing behind me as well. So I've grown up, Thomas, loving the monster films, especially the Universal monster films, and that kind of bled into my love of anything else relating to monsters, especially vampires, werewolves, and the like. And so I'm excited to get your thoughts on Renfield. And you know, when you look at the trailer for this, it looks like Cage is going full campy. So is it a full camp Cage, or is there more to it?
Yeah, so based on the trailers I'd seen, I figured it was going to be predominantly a comedy film with your classic monster horror elements. But I was also surprised to find that this is more of an action comedy than anything, and action comedy is basically my favorite movie genre. This movie was basically tailor-made for me. When I came out of the screening, I pulled up Letterboxd and checked out a few other reactions, and was surprised to see some other people were not nearly as pleased with it as I was. I even saw some people say, "Who in the world was this made for? The tone is all over the place. What is going on here?" And I'm like, it was me. That's me is the answer to that question. It was made exactly for me. I already knew that I was on board with Nicolas Cage as Count Dracula, the role he was born to play, and he definitely lives up to it.
So, you said action comedy. It sounds like there's a whole lot more action. Now, if you're going to compare this to other films of the like, are there other films that would fit in this category? Zombieland, Shaun of the Dead, any of those maybe have similarities?
Yeah, those two you mentioned in particular are great comparisons. The blood and the gore is insanely over the top and cartoonish. It kind of reminds me of your early Sam Raimi or Peter Jackson B-horror splatterfest movies. The practical effects are just fantastic. There's a scene where Nicholas Hoult, who plays Renfield, the title character, he literally rips off a bad guy's arms and beats somebody else with those arms, and then throws those arms like a javelin at other bad guys. So it is violent, but it's an over-the-top violent that's done for not necessarily the shock value, but for the humor value. Yeah, I mean, I would say it's kind of it's a equal mix of shock and humor value, but it's not like it's not realistic gore. It's not something like you'd see in a movie that I talked about a few months ago, Project Wolf Hunting, which was an action film out of Korea, I believe, and the action there was just so grotesque. But it still maintains some realism, but this stretches into the fantastical. So it's, I think, even for people who aren't a huge fan of blood and gore, I mean, they're going to come into this and they're going to be shocked, but because it doesn't stretch into that something that's not anatomically how things work, so it's not as terribly grotesque.
Okay, and the storyline, give us a quick synopsis of the film. So for those who may not be aware, it's about not Count Dracula, but Count Dracula and his little minion Renfield. But the story is more than that, right?
Well, yeah, Renfield is trying to escape from the clutches of Dracula, who's basically had him as his servant for centuries, and it's a toxic relationship, and he wants to do good in the world, but his power comes from Dracula, and in order to feed Dracula, he basically has to feed Dracula souls of the innocent. And that's the whole story is Renfield's kind of moral dilemma and trying to find a way to live a life of positivity and put good into the world while still maintaining his own life.
Wow, that's really interesting. So it's a morality tale of someone who is giving the souls of others to the Prince of Darkness, basically. Okay, so
yeah.
So did Cage go full on Raging Cajun in this?
Yeah, so Nicholas, the makeup and prosthetics on him are something that really stand out. In a few scenes, I sat there and thought to myself, wow, this is absolutely repulsive. I can't believe what I'm looking at here, and that's just with the incredible makeup talent behind the scenes. They did their jobs, and Nicholas Hoult is a very talented performer, and he gets to show off his leading man chops here. So the movie is called Renfield. It's obviously going to be his story. But there were a few moments or a few periods in the movie where I really wanted to get away from Hoult and get back to the main attraction for me personally, which was Nicolas Cage as Dracula. So is this a problem for the film at large? Maybe somewhat. I don't see a world in which Nicolas Cage Dracula doesn't overshadow Nicholas Hoult as Renfield. And kind of the whole point of the movie is the character of Renfield trying to overcome this toxic relationship. And Cage as Dracula makes that villainous toxicity just so entertaining. I don't think I would have had as much fun with this movie if it wasn't Cage playing Dracula. And so I guess thematically there are some shortcomings in terms of the narrative's attempt to explore those relationship dynamics. The script didn't quite reach its full potential, but if I'm going to be totally honest, I didn't come to this movie expecting a tight script with nuanced storytelling. It delivered what I signed up for.
Yeah, and I think what the director's intent was, and for those who know what they're getting into, but you said there was kind of the surprise of how much action there was in this, which you didn't expect. So that's good that you kind of lay that out there for those that are anticipating maybe a horror comedy. There is that, but it's not strictly that. Other comments you want to make sure you share about Renfield, and I think, let me say this, Hoult is a great actor, and so having him along with Nic Cage, I think, is pretty solid as well. Any final thoughts or comments before you dive in with your grade?
Well, basically, the whole theater was just hooting and hollering and having a grand old time watching a 90-minute popcorn flick, and a packed house of very engaged audience members.
Awesome.
This is the second time recently where I have to make note of the power of watching a comedy with the right audience who is locked in with the material, and that was the case again with this movie. And it is unfortunate that you don't always know walking into a theater how the audience is going to be, and some other audience members might walk into this and have an experience that's not nearly as engaging as mine. But
right.
Speaking from my experience, I did I watched it with the right crowd, and very much appreciated it, and I'm going to give this movie a solid B.
Awesome. Solid B for Renfield, and that is in theaters now.